This podcast may contain content that is graphic and disturbing in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
It has been nearly 3 years since this 5-year-old vanished from a New Jersey park while playing with her younger brother. But in a community that has a strong distrust of authorities, would her family get any answers? This is the Dulce Maria Alavez story. As always, it's great to see you, Meghan.
Always great, Amy. We look forward to these days together.
Meghan, today's case is a New Jersey case. Have you heard of this?
Nope.
All right, excellent. So the reason why I chose this case for 2 reasons. Number one, it's an unsolved case about a child who's missing.
Oh.
Number two, I read something that said some really nasty things about the mother of this child. So I was like, oh, there must be evidence against this mother. And then I read into it and saw, well, actually, there's no evidence that I see against this mother. So this is one of those cases where a woman is unfairly targeted.
Well, let's see. I'm going to reserve my opinion until I hear the facts of your case.
Dulce Maria Alavez was born on April 25th, 2014, and lived in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Do you know Bridgeton?
You know, after all these years of working and living in Jersey, I still don't know Jersey, all of Jersey.
There's so many towns. So
Yeah.
This is about 45 minutes south of Philly.
Oh, okay.
So it's a small rural community.
Okay.
It's in Cumberland County. So
Right.
it's far down there.
Yeah.
Now, Dulce lived with her mother, Noema Alavez Perez, and her father, Edgar Perez, were together for a couple of years. But in 2018, her father was deported back to Mexico.
Oh.
But he was very involved in her life prior to that. I don't believe the parents were ever married, but
They work together well.
as far as I understand it, they both cared for Dulce. Dulce was described in an interview by her mother as being a sweet girl, nice, loving, sounds like a typical kid. She liked to pretend she was a princess, then just a normal, spunky 5-year-old little girl. On September 16th, 2019, Noema, who was pregnant with her third child, decided she wanted to entertain her children with a trip to a nearby park.
Okay.
So at about 4 p.m., they stopped at a Sunoco gas station to get the children ice cream. You know how
Okay.
they have like a little mini mart.
Of course.
So on this trip were 5-year-old Dulce, her 3-year-old brother, and also Noema's 8-year-old sister, who was the child's aunt.
Oh, wow. They were close in age. How old was Noema?
She was only 19 at this time.
Oh, she was young.
Yeah, she had Dulce, I believe, when she was 13. So a lot of reports incorrectly state that this 8-year-old child was Dulce's older sister, but she was not, in fact, her older sister, nor was she a cousin. She was the child's aunt.
Okay.
So again, they stopped to get ice cream. They head to Bridgeton City Park. Now, this park was located behind Bridgeton High School and covered about 1,000 acres in the area. Basketball courts, swings. So when the group got to the park, Dulce and her brother ran out of the car to go play on the swings, while Noema stayed in the car to help her sister, the 8-year-old girl, with her homework. And she was also scratching a lottery ticket that she had purchased at that mart where they stopped for ice cream.
Okay.
Now, you can see the playground from the car. It was about 30 yards away, which is 90 feet. So
Oh.
not that far, but you could not see all of the playground. There were the swings. There was kind of like a hill in front of it, and you could see online. So there was a small hill in front of the swings. So from where Noema parked, you didn't have a direct line of sight to there. Noema claims the children were out of sight for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. And after not seeing them, her and her sister walked down to the playground from the car to go check on them.
How old is Dulce's brother?
3 years old.
Okay. Wow, that's young.
They went down to the park and they found Dulce's brother standing by himself, and he was crying and his ice cream had fallen on the floor. And when they asked where his sister went, he only pointed to a cluster of buildings. Now, they're kind of more like maintenance sheds
Okay.
that you would see in a park. Noema says her 3-year-old did not know how to speak at the time, so he couldn't really give her any information, but it was clear that he didn't know where his sister was, and he was upset.
Were there other kids on the playground?
Noema didn't see anyone else in the park, but there were some girls on a nearby basketball court, probably about 10 years old or so.
Okay.
Now, Noema says at first she just thought her daughter was playing hide and go seek, so she walked up and down some paths. She looked behind the buildings, calling her daughter's name. She also asked the girls on the basketball court if they had seen anything. One said that she saw a black man passing by when Dulce went behind the buildings, and another said that they saw a red van nearby at that time too. So at this point, Noema's getting kind of frantic.
Mhm.
She calls 911. Let's take a quick listen.
911, where's your emergency?
I can't find my daughter.
Okay, when was the last time you seen her?
We were here at the park and people said that probably somebody took her.
Okay. How old is she?
She's 5 years old.
Okay, and what park are you at?
Here in Bridgeton Park.
Okay, where at in the Bridgeton Park are you?
The one with the basketball court where high school is.
Okay, so you're at the basketball courts behind the high school?
Yes.
Okay. And what was she seen last wearing?
She was wearing, give me a second. She's still playing with them on the game from the weekend? I don't remember what clothes she was wearing, but she was wearing, I just remember her pants. She was wearing like a flowery pants and some heels, some white heels.
Okay. All right, ma'am, stay on the line. I'm going to transfer you over to the police, okay? You said she was 5, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hi, did you see which direction your child went?
No, we were in the car. She came down with my son. They were running to the park, and then me and my sister, we came down. When we got here at the park, she wasn't here. They said that my son was just crying with his ice cream. Because somebody threw his ice cream in the floor, and my daughter just ran away.
All right. You didn't see anyone else around there that she could possibly have went with?
No, no that I know of. Because we didn't saw no one. There's just some other people that they're here that said that they saw her running through some houses in the back. And they said that they saw two men. They saw a black guy and they saw a Mexican man with two kids.
Who's saying that they saw them?
Because there's people here in the basketball court that they saw her. They said that they saw her running.
They're saying that there's people there at the basketball court that they saw her running through some houses with two black males. She's light-skinned, Spanish. What color top does she have on?
I don't remember.
Okay. Are you at the basketball court?
Yes, I'm right here right now.
That's affirmed. She says that she's at the basketball court. And do you have your son with you, or is your son?
No, I have my son with me. They say he was crying when we found him. He was just standing there crying.
Oh, he was standing there crying. So you said that the black males took his ice cream?
No, they threw it in the floor. They had threw it in the floor.
So the two males took his ice cream and threw it on the floor, and then they left with your daughter?
Probably, because I didn't saw it. When we came and looked for her, we were looking everywhere for her.
She said that her son was at the basketball court with her daughter, that there was two black males that took her son's ice cream and threw it on the ground and left with her daughter. Okay, well, we have the officers. Are you on Mayor Aiken?
I already have an officer here.
Okay. All right, go speak with the police, ma'am, okay?
Okay, so that's the 911 call. And like every 911 call, people scrutinized this call. We're not in the business of doing that, right?
No.
But is anything you want to talk about, though, in the call?
I think that people are probably like, how did she not know what her daughter was wearing, if I had to guess? But she was also like, at that moment, I think people should realize like she probably her brain was scattered, right? And she was panicked and probably just couldn't remember.
Yes.
So,
and we'll talk about what the child was actually wearing. And it's not that it was so far off, but the white heels, like
I was thinking white heels on a playground.
So she wasn't actually, I mean, she's only 5. She wasn't wearing heels. They were like a sandal with like a little thing on it. They were cute,
little,
you know.
like a wedge thing or
kind of, even smaller than that. But
okay.
Either way, she was wearing pants that had flowers, but they were black and white checkered. But okay, so police arrived. They started processing the scene. Meghan, what do you think the first thing the police should be doing in this type of scenario?
Well, nowadays, the Amber Alert.
Yeah, they should be sending out an Amber Alert immediately. I would think. Well,
that was only a couple of years ago.
Well, It wasn't until the next day, about 30 hours after the abduction, that an Amber Alert was sent out. Now, many people criticize the time that this took, and I would have to agree.
I
but
agree.
Do you see any scenario where waiting maybe could have been better?
No.
I don't think so either.
No.
Let's talk about Amber Alerts just for a minute.
All right.
So it's actually called the Amber Plan, and it's commonly known as the Amber Alert, but it's actually called the Amber Plan. This was created in 1996 in response to the tragic case in Texas when 9-year-old Amber Hagerman was kidnapped while riding her bicycle and brutally murdered. Now, the tragedy, of course, shocked and outraged the community, and it was actually the residents who contacted radio stations in the area and suggested that they broadcast, a special alert over the airways.
Right.
So in response to the community's concern for the safety of children, there was an association of radio managers that teamed up with local law enforcement and developed this early warning system. Statistics show that when abducted, a child's greatest enemy is the passage of time.
Yep.
Right? Do you have any idea what they,
It's very quick. I know that. It's something like if you don't find them within like the first 6 hours or 8 hours, the chances go down substantially.
Yeah, so it's interesting. One statistic I found that I was actually surprised by is that most missing children are found. Like 99 point something, because most missing children, especially between the age of 11 and 15, are either runaways or lost, and they're recovered.
Or it's a family abduction.
Exactly. And actually, of non-family abductions, there's only 20% that are found deceased. And obviously, that's a lot of children, but I think people think the numbers are higher.
Of course they do, because the cases that are featured are the most extreme cases. So that's, it's like the stranger danger phenomenon.
Yeah. And there was one study I looked at. When you look at cases of abducted children who were in fact murdered, 76% of these cases, the child was deceased within 3 hours.
Yeah.
And in over 88%, it was within 24 hours. So, I mean, if a child's in a van and they said, this van took her, that's figure a mile a minute. Every minute that child is getting a mile further from where she was taken.
When they're abducted by strangers, it's usually going to be for, unfortunately, a sexual assault. And then a murder is almost always going to follow in that scenario. So it is going to happen within hours.
Yeah. And, going back to the Amber Alert, there's a lot of variation in the implementation of these alerts. So I want to talk about what the criteria is in New Jersey.
Oh.
Because people were, like I said, very critical of the fact that it took so long for the Amber Alert to go out, and this van could be in another state by then, right?
Of course.
Okay, so in New Jersey, the alert is intended to be issued when there is reason to believe that a child has been abducted and may be in danger of death or serious bodily injury. Now, the point is, it's not intended for all missing child incidents, such as runaways, child custody situations, and it's up to law enforcement to make the call,
right,
to make sure it's used appropriately. And I understand, because if we use it too much, it'll be like the boy who cried wolf, and it would lose public confidence, right?
I agree, but this is the case for which it was designed. This is a potential stranger abduction.
Well, is it? We don't know, because the police at the beginning, they don't know if it was a custody dispute or, I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's what some people would say. The police weren't quick to do it because they knew that, as we'll talk about in a moment, that Dulce's father and mother were not together. Who knows? It could be custody.
On the surface, it seems like a stranger abduction, and I think they should err on the side of caution and put that Amber Alert out.
100% agree. The system's designed to be first response, but I think it failed in this case.
Yeah.
The alert that eventually did go out included Dulce's description as well as who they think is a person of interest. A thin-framed, light-skinned Hispanic man wearing orange sneakers, red pants, black shirt. Now, it's unclear where this description came from, but remember, it was also reported that it was an African-American man earlier, and I don't know where they got this. It seems like the only place it could have come from is the girls on the basketball courts, because they were the only ones who saw anything. Now, the alert described him as a suspect, but the police would say that they just wanted to talk to this person because he might be a possible witness. We see this all the time, right? The police don't want to scare off someone.
Right.
But it scares people off anyway.
Yes.
Now, police, their initial theory was that while playing on the swing set with her brother, Dulce was somehow lured into a red van. Now, this red van had sliding passenger doors and tinted windows. One report says a man waved her over and she went, which could maybe be an indication that she knew her abductor, or again, she was lured by something.
Right.
I mean, I think this is just speculation. It's unclear what people saw. There was also another description that said Dulce was placed in the back seat behind the passenger seat. Like she was sitting in the car and like belted in, like, and someone saw her leaving.
Oh, okay. I see. So that was reported by, but not substantiated.
Not that I could find.
Got
that doesn't mean it's not behind the scenes.
Okay.
The police are doing their job. They were interviewing locals. They were releasing, pictures of Dulce. They even started like draining a waterway. Like they were going fast. They were looking in wooded areas, and the community sprung into action. Many local businesses even donated money. Like it was like an all hands on deck. People from nearby communities came over to help search. Some people flew drones over the park, hoping that, the little girl just wandered off and they would find her. There was also a huge candlelight vigil that was held at the park. Massive posters with her face posted all over the community and neighboring communities. But unfortunately, other than the description that we mentioned earlier, there were 0 leads in the case. As far as I could tell, there were no cameras at the park, and local surveillance from other businesses and homes in the area didn't pick up anything. And there were no direct eyewitnesses other than Dulce's brother, because the girls on the court didn't actually see an abduction.
Right.
As far as I know, but then we have these other people saying she was seen getting into a van. So it's very, it kind of seems like contradictory statements here. So nothing really happens. About 5 months after the disappearance, anonymous letters were sent to 2 businesses and a library in Ohio.
About what?
Referencing, the missing girl. And we have no idea what the actual contents of the letter were, but the contents of the letter prompted a search of a wooded area using dogs and drones, but nothing was ever found. Then another set of letters were sent to the family spokesperson, who reported receiving a letter. Now, this one was postmarked. The other ones were not. This one was postmarked Cleveland, Ohio, and it contained 7 slips of paper that really just had a bunch of scribbled phrases. Some of the words that she was able to make out, because again, it was barely legible. The words Alaska, Mexico, border, 1776, Civil War, New England town, kids orphanage.
I don't even understand what's happening.
So this could just be someone trying to insert themselves. It sounds like a bunch of just mumbled words. It doesn't seem to make sense. Along with these letters, which never went anywhere, there were some suggestions from a local psychic, because we hear this happens before. And because of the psychic's tips, there was a search in a field behind Dulce's school, some other searches in other areas, but nothing was found. There were some other tips, but everything led, dead end. Now, Dulce's mother, Noema, was intensely scrutinized by the media.
Oh, I had a feeling that was coming.
Yeah. And actually, many people would say she was even harassed through the use of racist remarks.
Wow.
So online critics, because, this was big on social media, like most things, online critics had attacked her for not being a fit parent. One comment even going as far as saying in her culture, they don't watch their kids.
That's awful.
It's awful. And then in another post, another series of posts, people were criticizing her for eating a slice of pizza while community members searched for Dulce. This is ridiculous. Everyone has to eat, regardless of if your kid's missing or not. At some point you have to eat.
Of course. It seems like there's a lot of criticism, but she also had a lot of support, you're saying. A lot of people sprung into action to help.
People are springing into action to help Dulce.
But, okay, got it.
Yeah, because a 5-year-old little girl is missing. Unfortunately, in the court of public opinion, whether or not people looked at her as a suspect, they looked at her as it's her fault because she wasn't watching her child.
Right.
Which I think is totally unfair.
I mean, you have kids. When you go to the park, let's be honest, do you keep your eye on them 100% of the time?
No, to be honest, I don't know that I would stay in the car if they're 3 and 5.
Right.
But I've been on a bench chatting with someone else, and I don't have my eyes on them the whole time.
Right.
So, I can't fault her. And I don't know what this neighborhood was like, if she felt safe leaving her kids to run off. I don't know the dynamics, right? Remember that spokesperson I mentioned who received those strange letters?
Yes.
Well, in April of 2021, she decided she was no longer going to be the spokesperson for the family because she said that Dulce's mother was displaying a troubling lack of emotion and a lack of motivation for finding her daughter. So she totally went from supporting the family to kind of doing complete 180. Now, the family spokesperson, she said that Dulce's grandmother, who was Noema's mother, often had to be convinced to speak on her daughter's behalf. Because, this person was trying to help the family get in front of the media.
Mm-hmm.
And the family was kind of not really interested. They had to be persuaded to speak publicly.
Well, maybe it's also in response to the criticism that they were taking, that they're, you know what I mean, being harassed. They didn't want to be in front of the media.
I mean, there's also a big language barrier.
I was going to say that next.
There's shyness. There's possible past trauma.
Yeah.
There's grief. There's guilt.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think it's really fair to be judging these people. But again, we don't know what she knows.
Right.
So,
right.
She further stated that she suspected since the first day of the search that Dulce's mother knew more about the disappearance than she was letting on because she is scared. So again, I don't know if she knows more than we know or if she's just speculating. But again, we're not in the business of gossiping. So I don't think we should spend much time speculating here because as far as I've seen, there is no known evidence of Noema's involvement. And we have no clue what happened between this woman and Dulce's family.
Absolutely.
Now, Noema, although she's been kind of quiet, she has done a few interviews.
Oh, okay.
She was actually on, remember Mike Morford?
Yes.
He has a podcast called Missing Persons, and he interviewed her, which I thought was super interesting. She also gave an interview with Dr. Phil.
Oh.
Now, this I did not like. This interview rubbed me the wrong way.
How come?
So Dr. Phil, who, by the way, I don't believe is even a doctor, but he asked Noema if she was involved in Dulce's disappearance and whether she had sold her.
What?
Or knew who had her. So he creates this narrative, which the public then runs with, and people start thinking, that's what happened, is she sold her daughter.
Oh.
And, she says no. She does a very simple no. Now, people didn't like these interviews because she had one-word answers, and she came across as very quiet, shy, and kind of lack of emotion, which Dr. Phil even noted that she had a lack of emotion. So, for example, he would say, and this was the same on Mike Morford's interview, do you know what happened to your daughter? No. Have the police told you anything? No. It's just very...
Right. And if you asked, I guess the expectation, if someone asked you if you sold your child, I imagine you'd be have a really strong response. Absolutely not. How could you, say that? So I guess they were looking for more of a guttural reaction.
But again, that guttural, that could be fake anyway, right?
Yeah, no. You just cannot judge someone on their affect.
No. And she was also asked straight out, if you were to guess, what do you think happened? And she thinks maybe an old friend may have her daughter. So there was this man that she saw sometime before the abduction, and she was with her daughter. I don't know if this was a friend, an acquaintance. He asked who Dulce was, and she said, that's my daughter. And this guy tried to date her, and she rejected him. So she thinks, if she had to pick someone, maybe he was trying to get revenge on her for not wanting to date him. Who knows? I mean...
Well, that's because they put, the question kind of forces her into an answer. When of the unknown, she has to speculate.
Yeah. And when she was interrogated or questioned, she was never an actual suspect. When she was questioned by the police, they said, think hard, think of anyone. Who could have done this? So as a result of that, you're racking your brain. And if that's the only person you've come across in the last week that isn't part of your normal routine, of course, that's going to stick out to you.
Yeah.
So, I think people held on to that. I have no clue what this man's name was. I don't know if he was ever interviewed or investigated by the police, but I can't imagine that he wasn't investigated at the very least. She also did take a polygraph, but she says that they never told her the results. I would imagine she passed because we would have heard otherwise.
I think so.
Yeah. So this case is pretty recent. It's only 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
And it is very much active, but the police are struggling to get any information. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the area they live in is made up of primarily Latino immigrants. Any reason you could think of why the police might be having trouble getting information from the community?
Because the community is fearful of deportation, and so they won't talk to the authorities.
Yes. And, we know under recent administrations, ICE really cracked down. And when we have tougher immigration policies and tactics, it's hard for law enforcement to develop trust with the community and really do their job. This becomes pretty problematic.
Right.
So the investigation itself has heightened fears among residents in that area.
Yeah.
Residents don't want to come forward with tips to the police because they fear that it'll put them on ICE's radar. Mm-hmm. And I think they have every reason to feel this way because at one point early on, Noema's boyfriend, a man by the name of Edgar Martinez Santiago, he was a Mexican citizen and he was arrested by ICE, but he was later released. But this sends the message that ICE is involved. And if you recall, Dulce's father was deported a few years earlier.
Right.
Or just a year. Actually, her father was deported about a year before this. So there's reason for the community to be concerned.
Maybe there wasn't reason for them to suspect a custody issue if her father was deported, though. Sorry, that's just something.
Well, they were able to rule him out quickly.
Well, not quick enough because 30 hours passed. I'm saying going back to the Amber Alert.
Yeah.
They should have been able to quickly determine he's been deported.
They
it's
might
not
have
a custody issue.
But I feel like that maybe it took them 30 hours to. I don't know.
It
doesn't seem.
It doesn't sit well with me. I think knowing that quick enough they should have sprung into action sooner on the Amber Alert.
I agree. A spokesperson for the local police in Bridgeton, they had tried to assure the community by putting out a statement that ICE does not target witnesses. ICE encourages undocumented immigrants to cooperate with local, state, and federal authorities without fear of reprisal. So they're really trying to mend their ties with the local community.
That's very hard.
Even the Police Athletic League introduced a soccer program, hoping it would help foster trust between police and community. and they're offering like free classes for parents. It's a lot of this community policing stuff that we talk about.
That's great because I will say that on a positive note, that's nice that they're trying to do community policing in the real way that it was intended to be done.
Yeah, but it might be too little too late.
I think so too.
This brings up a really important conversation because should courts be a sanctuary the way that schools, hospitals, and places of worship are? Meaning that people who are illegal, they can feel safe in these places without fearing that ICE is going to come in. Because you wouldn't want people who are sick to be scared to go to the hospital. Right? So we have these sanctuaries.
Right.
Now, this becomes an issue in domestic abuse cases. There have been several cases where women who were the victims of domestic abuse did not come forward because they were illegally in the United States and their husbands or partners knew this.
Yeah.
They would exploit that.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that we point out the issue with this. So Meghan, do you have any ideas of how we can balance ICE's mission and what they need to get done with the fact that we want people who are victims and people who have information about crimes to feel safe enough to come forward in cases like this?
I think it would have to be what you referenced earlier, and that we have to give immunity to people. I don't know what, or short of changing immigration policy, which I probably would anyway, if that's not on the table, then we have to give some type of immunity so that people are not afraid to come forward.
Okay, so where does this leave us with this case? Well,
not anywhere good, it seems like.
In September of 2021, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children produced an age progression image that shows what Dulce may look like now as a 7-year-old.
Okay.
Around this time, the Bridgeton police also made an official statement on the case saying, quote, "We hold out hope that Dulce is alive as we have no evidence of her demise. We want the public to know that this case will remain open until such time as we locate Dulce and determine those who are responsible for her disappearance." They're taking this very serious. There's a multi-agency effort to find Dulce. You have the Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office, the Bridgeton Police, New Jersey State Police, New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security.
That's a lot.
Of course, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
I'm glad that so many agencies are coordinating and interested.
Yes, and it's nice to see because sometimes we see when a child comes from, a certain area or when we see children from marginalized communities go missing, we don't see as much action sometimes. So It is nice to see the action in this case. There's something that the community holds called Dulce's Day. Every year, it's a silent march and candlelight vigil to commemorate the anniversary of the disappearance. Everyone wears yellow because that's the color Dulce was wearing when she went missing. They march by starting at the park, and then they march to Cumberland County Prosecutor's Office and then to the police station.
Wow.
And the nice thing about this event is there's a lot of events for local children. It's all about community building. So I think the police and I think officials in the area realize they need the community to kind of have buy-in more to maybe help them solve this case.
Yeah.
Now, I have not heard any updates since this time in September 2021, but I can tell you that there is a reward of up to $75,000 currently.
Wow.
Now, this is through the FBI, I believe $50,000 through the FBI, and then another $25,000 from local businesses and organizations. So this is for any information that leads to the whereabouts of Dulce Maria Alavez. The child was last seen wearing a yellow shirt with a koala on the front, black and white pants with butterflies and flowers on them, and white dress sandals. And you can see pictures online. Remember, they went into that Sunoco to get ice cream?
Yes.
There were videos there, so that was the last known image of her. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact the FBI's toll-free tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. You can also contact your local FBI office or the nearest American embassy or consulate. Of course, you can also contact the Bridgeton Police. Anyone with photos or videos from the park on or around September 16th, 2019 should also contact the FBI.
Right.
So, Meghan, now that we told everyone, what they could do, let's take a moment to talk about really, the theories, just some discussion. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when we look at the typology of child abductions, there's usually a few motives. What are they usually? You already mentioned like two of them.
Yeah. When there's a stranger abduction, it's usually going to be for a sexual assault, which will be followed by a murder. But, the other ones are custodial, so parental abductions. There are other abductions whereby someone will take a child because they wanted a child or they lost a child. And so, they're actually looking to take a child.
Yeah, you nailed it. So it's unfortunately sexual motive. And that's when it's a stranger abduction. The most often child abduction is unauthorized removal or retention of a minor from a parent. So custody issues or maternal desire. Sometimes you see it for ransom.
Right. Oh, yeah. I forgot the
But
ransom.
that's also a small.
Yeah. And there was no ransom.
Yeah,
in
but
this
I'm just
case.
saying when we look at
Yeah.
different types.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we think this was a crime of opportunity, or is this possible that somebody was kind of staking out the park?
I was wondering that. I was thinking about that in my head. I was thinking about the other cases that we know. So like, Meghan Kanka, Polly Klaas, there was a neighbor. So in this case, was she followed? Probably not. I'm going to imagine someone was staking out the park because they're probably a sexual offender and looking for a child's. So I don't know. I don't think it was crime of opportunity in that the opportunity came about. There was a child
Unattended. Lack of a
unattended.
capable guardian.
Yeah, you're talking about routine activities theory
course.
here to explain it. So yeah, you have a motivated offender. There's no guardian around, and she, unfortunately, Dulce was the suitable target. So that would explain it. And I do think it was a stranger abduction for a sexual assault.
Yeah,
That's what I think. If I have to speculate.
Yeah, it is possible that, I was thinking about, a little bit about lifestyle theory, and Dulce's grandparents took her to that park pretty often. Noema took her to the park sometimes. So could it be someone that had their eye on her specifically?
That could be.
If it's a small community, could it be someone from within the community who was targeting Dulce and maybe waiting until the right opportunity?
I mean, that's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, statistically speaking, the most likely scenario is that she was taken by somebody who knew her or knew the family quite well.
That's statistics, but
Yeah, I know.
this is a strain. It seems to me all the indicators point to the much rarer situation, the ones that you hear about, the ones the media reports on. And I think this was a stranger abduction. Or if it's not like a total stranger abduction, like you said, someone who maybe knew her and was targeting her, but still not known. I don't think this was a family member or a friend.
I mean, it's very brazen, right? So this offender is somebody who I think had an urge and they needed to act on that urge immediately, because we're talking broad daylight, red
brazen.
van, orange shoes, red pants. Like, this isn't someone who was trying to be inconspicuous. So I find that interesting as well. And the fact that they couldn't find this vehicle, there's millions of red vans, but it's not like it was like your white utility van. It's not, so like it
Unless
just
it was an incorrect report. Unless it wasn't actually a red van.
Well, maybe there was a red van in the area. That doesn't mean it's the one that took Dulce.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean? It
yeah.
could be-
Or the red van was ditched, or there's any number of possibilities.
Now, I think there's reason that we should have hope because of people like Elizabeth Smart and J.C. Dugard.
That's true.
I mean, JC, I just finished reading her memoir. 18 years. And she was, thank God, found alive.
You're talking about rare cases, right?
Yes.
And then even rarer that after a long time someone's found. But you're
It
right.
happens.
It does happen, for sure. Listen, I would treat it as the police are treating it. There's no evidence at this time to suggest that she is no longer with us. So keep pursuing it and have that sliver of hope.
And I think it's important because when the police are quick to assume that maybe the child has been murdered, they're going to look in different places than if they assume the child is still alive. So it's very important that you consider all possibilities, because if they were spending a lot of time like draining waterways, and obviously draining a waterway, you're assuming a child is deceased. And I think it's okay to look there, but I think it's important to also look where a child would be held captive.
I can't believe there's no surveillance in this case. That really bothers me that there's nothing around a school that would show anything.
And we're not talking about a long time ago either.
No, we're not. That's what I find that surprising, I guess. Or no cameras capturing like the van.
Well, let's hope the police know more than they're saying.
Okay. I'm going to go with that, Amy. I hope they know more than they're saying, and I hope they continue the search for this girl.
And of course, if you have any information at all, then, you heard where you can contact. And I really hope this is one of those cases that we'll be doing an update with some good news sometime soon.
I hope so, too. Thank you so much for this case, Amy.
All right. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Women in Crime.
Women in Crime is written and hosted by Megan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer and editor is James Varga. Music composition is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to subscribe and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as virtual happy hours and an extra full-length episode each month. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenincrime.
Sources for today's episode include NJ 101.5, FBI, New York Times, ABC News, the Press of Atlantic City, New York Post, Nj.com, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Nj.gov, and Ojp.gov.